Okay, so thank you very much to all of you for joining this colloquium series again. We are starting after a couple of months, almost a couple of months of a summer break. And we are starting with a great presentation. I think it's a topic that interests many of us because of our area of working, I mean, geographical area in the Amazon. And it has relevance for all SEF departments, I think also, no? So thank you, Carla, very much for accepting to present your work here. That's Lessons from the Past for the Conservation of the Amazon, the Archaeology of the Llanos de Mojos, Bolivia. Just to shortly introduce Carla. Carla is a Bolivian researcher. She has a PhD in anthropology from the University of Bonn. And since 2016, she is a lecturer at the Department for the Anthropology of the Americas. And we know that she is an expert in the area, in the Amazon area, because, for example, in 2017, she has been president of the International Meeting of Amazonian Archaeology in Trinidad, Bolivia, no? And her research focuses on complex societies in the Southwest Amazon, expansion and ethnogenesis processes and heritage. And she also has experience in other countries, for example, with archaeological materials from the Ecuadorian, Peruvian, and Brazilian Amazon, no? So she has a regional view through time and space. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Carla. And just that you know, before starting, as you have seen, this session is recorded. If you have problems later in the questions and answer session, you can always put your hand up and ask your question directly with or without camera, but you can always use also the chat, no? And with that, I hand this over to Carla. We look forward to listen to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the invitation to participate in this space. Okay. Well, no, doesn't work. Yes. I will start with some facts about the Amazon. And the Amazon basin drains of forests and savannas. It discharges about 20% of the world's fresh water into the ocean. The Amazon is the most biologically diverse place. 1/3 of the world's species live in the Amazon. The Amazon covers around 8.5 million square kilometers. It is larger than Europe and includes 9 different countries in South America. There are more than 300 indigenous populations and nationalities living in the Amazon, without counting the many peoples who have chosen to live in isolation from national societies. Each one of them is a depository of its own culture and language. 45% of the Amazon region is made up of indigenous territories, shown in the map in orange color, and natural protected areas that we can see in green.
No, we were not seeing, but now we are seeing your map, sorry.
Oh, okay. It is estimated that by 2015, in some legal way, 2,467 indigenous territories had been recognized, and many more still to be recognized. Through the 19th century, German ethnologists research initiatives sought to account to the depths of Amazon cultural history through the combined study of nature and culture. This was for von den Steinen a methodological prerogative and epistemological priority. Von den Steinen is one of the first German ethnologists that he was in Amazonian. He indicated, I cannot point out this condition enough from the beginning because otherwise we would not properly appreciate the material culture of the natives and not understand their spiritual culture at all. According to von den Steinen, the botanical and faunistic divers of the Amazon offered indigenous people a heterogeneous cultural medium for the expression of their worldview. Ehrenreich, he's another German anthropologist, specified that although nature delimitate human actions, at the same time, it provides the material elements to develop the cultural solutions to dominate it. According to the members of the Xingu expeditions, one of the first expedition in the Amazon and one of the biggest one, the high level of cultural development of the Amazonian indigenous people was evident in the complex ornamental productions, for example, as well as in the balanced exploitation of natural resources. And finally, in the linguistic and cosmological complexity related to plants and animals. Von den Steinen exhorted to need to consider nature as real culture when we investigate the history of the Amazonian peoples. And I think that is an inspiration for all of us. Although more than 100 years ago, the intense relationships between society and nature was already expressed for the Amazon, the historical chapters that occurred in the 20th century, such as the exploitation of the rubber, the enslavement of indigenous people, the colonization of their territory, and the systematic violence exercised in the extraction of natural resources have allowed the stereotype of fragile and dispersed societies to remain present. In an Amazon that is once again in danger from hydropower dam building, mechanized agriculture, mineral extraction, burning, and urban expansion, ancient knowledge could be one of the keys of the conservation. In this map, we can see the growth of the intensive agriculture scheme in the year 1990, 2000, and we can see how it's spread out, 2010, and the last one, 2018. And we can see now these green spaces, they are the natural parks. And we can see how this mechanized agriculture and intensive and extensive agriculture comes from the Brazilian into the Bolivian territory. At the end of the last year, the new land use law 2019 for Beni Bolivian was approved, in which was decided that an area of more than 300,000 hectares would be deforested and dedicated to the intensive agricultural use. You can see this area marked in red in the map, so here. That should be everything for intensive agriculture. and that 5.5 million hectares would be dedicated to extensive landgraf use. So that are the numbers in superficial, supervision here, you know, that we have from this new law. The Llanos de Mojos is located in Bolivia and is part of the southwestern Amazon basin. This region is one of the largest seasonally flooded savannas in the world, and it covers approximately 130,000 square kilometers. Surrounded by the Andes and the uplands of the Brazilian Shield, this area is significant in discussions about movement of groups and cultural interactions, particularly between pre-Hispanic settlements in lowland South American and the Andes. The southern Amazon is and especially the Llanos de Mojos is a very important region because it presents a sequence of settlements that cover most of the Holocene period between 8000 BC until 1500 AD. The climate of this tropical savanna is characterized by two marked seasons: the rainy seasons from October to April and the dry seasons from May to September. On the picture, you can see how the landscape can change radically. In 1960, William Denevan delimited 5 areas on a comprehensive map, plotting the spatial distribution of pre-Hispanic cultural elements in the Llanos de Mojos. That includes remarkable examples of adaptation to nature and the creation of extensive man-made earthworks. Anthropogenic earthworks are particularly interesting in the research of the Llanos de Mojos, which evidence on a large and complex cultural activities. In the archaeological literature, the Llanos de Mojos are well known for their earthworks, like ridged fields, canals, causeways, built in pre-Hispanic time for agricultural use, covering extensive areas to the west of the Mamori River. And as you can see on the map, in both of them, the Llanos de Mojos is an area marked in red because of the concentration of earthworks, you know, here and here. This presentation is focused on examples of the monumentality on the Amazon. One example is the mounds in the southeast of the Llanos de Mojos. It refers to a project executed by Heiko Prumers from the German Archaeological Institute in collaboration with the Bolivian Archaeological Department. Much less was known about the habitation sites and consequently the pre-Hispanic population of the region. Prior to our project, no survey had been carried out. None of the habitational sites had been properly mapped, and only limited excavation had been conducted on the habitation sites. I have to emphasize the fact that this particular area is not exposed to regular flooding and therefore lacks of traces of raised fields agriculture. A survey undertaken by our project over an area of 4,500 square kilometers revealed the existence of more than 100 mounds. Their size ranged from 5 meters to more than 100 hectares, from 5 to more than 100 hectares, and the height of the mounds or platform buildings range from generally situated on fluvial deposits or inactive rivers. On this map, you can find the earthworks, and the small triangles represent mounds of less than 8 hectares. The medium triangles represent mounds between 8 and 16 hectares, and the large triangles represent mounds larger than 16 hectares, like this one or this one. Or here we have some of them. So the large one, that they could be bigger than 20 meters high. Loma Cotoca is one of the biggest mounds. This one here, in the whole study area. It is located on the outer edge of the cluster made by 15 smaller mounds. Its position is not at the center of the constellation of other mounds, but the central role of the Loma Cotoca is also shown by the impressive system of canals and causeways that irradiates from the mount in all directions. So you can see here, this in the causeways. The Loma Cotoca is a center of an area of approximately 500 square kilometers. We undertook excavations in 2 monumental mounds, Loma Mendoza and Loma Salvatierra, both being medium-sized mounds. My thesis project from my master's degree was made with the material culture of Loma Mendoza, and my PhD project with the pottery of the Loma Salvatierra. The 2 sites selected are located near the village Casarabe, and the distance between the 2 sites is approximately 3 kilometers. A third site, Loma Alta de Casarabe, had been studied at the end of the 1970s by an Argentinian team. From 1999 to 2003, we excavated the Mount Mendoza. The Mount Mendoza have been cut in the middle during the construction of the road that connects Trinidad with Santa Cruz de la Sierra. Almost the entire center of this site, a 5-meter wide strip, has been destroyed, but a bulk left on the western side of the road was an excellent starting point for our work at the site. The most important result from this excavation was to determine that the mound was man-made, evidencing an occupational period and artificial construction between around 600 and 1400 AD. And you can see how was the process from this construction and reconstruction. From 2003 to 2006, we excavated the pre-Hispanic site of Loma Salvatierra. The center of the Loma Salvatierra site is formed by a low artificial terrace, this is this one, lying in an oxbox of a paleo river, here. And the major platform building, this one, the Mount 1, rising to the height of 7 meters, and some lower platforms were built on these terraces. We have here another platforms, and here some of them. On the top of the Mount 1, low platforms are arranged in the U shape, enclosing a space that opens to the northwest. The site is delimited by a polygonal causeway here, enclosing an area of 21 hectares. Located to the south, there are canals, ponds, and dikes, which were most probably used to regulate and or capture water from the savanna in the south. So here we can see this canal and these ponds. According to the radiocarbon dates from our excavation at Loma Salvatierra and the nearby Loma Mendoza, both mounds were occupied between 600 and 1400 AD. A detailed analysis of the ceramic found at these sites allowed us to propose a fine ceramic chronology subdivided into 5 ceramic phases. Excavation units were placed at different parts of the sites. 2 of them located on top of the major platform building, Mount 1, reveal a complex stratigraphy, which the events that form it corresponding to the phases 3 or 5, so between 800 until 1400 AD. The ceramic found in this excavation units was a high quality throughout the sequence, indicating that the top of the Mount 1 might have been reserved for a special purpose or was perhaps the residence of the elite. An area of more than 200 square meters was excavated in Mount 2, an L-shaped platform located to the south of the Mount 1, this area. Almost 50 graves were uncovered there. They showed a big diversity in the deposition of the body and its orientation. Dated around 600 AD, one of the most interesting burials was found in the center of this Mount 2. It was the only one with metal objects on the in front side. There is a copper disc and intriguingly made personal adornments of bone and stones. We can see here the bracelets for jaguar tusk, and the individual, a man in his 30s, also wore ear disc of copper with a round segment cut out and the armor of an armadillo in the opposite side. You can see here the metal and the armadillo and the armor of the armadillo on the opposite side. Maize and diversity of plants was documented at the sites by the analysis of starch residues in the pottery and by burned seeds. However, emerging evidence suggests that around 1000 AD, the people from the Loma Salvatierra may even have abandoned agriculture and reverted to a mixed subsistence economy. So those are the artifacts that we analyzed, where we found a wide range of crops, including maize, manioc, peanuts, cotton, jams, and palms. Animal food source, such as game and fish, seems to have been a dietary staple until circa 1000 AD. Fluctuation in the fish spectrum observed by Prestes Carneiro from phases 3 to 4 and for 4 to 5, so around 800 AD and 1000 AD, be related to cultural and or landscape transformations occurring around 1100 AD at the Loma Salvatierra. So what we could see is that there is a change in the diet of these people around 1100 AD. From 113 mounds, surface material of 77 mounds was collected. After having elaborated the fine ceramic sequence, I analyzed the surface ceramic of these mounds. My premise was that the material that is on the surface corresponds to the last occupation. As you can see in the table, although most of the mounds were occupied until the phase of 5, that is between 1200 and 1400 AD, 19%, that is 15 mounds, were only occupied until phase 3, that is before 1000 AD. Thus, this suggests a much earlier onset or abandonment of the mounds. I hypothesized that some structural changes occur around 1000 AD and before, and some mounds must have been abandoned and some bigger sites were built as a concentration of politics or the emergence of social confederations. Unfortunately, we know very little about the socio-political landscapes around 1000 AD in the Llanos de Mojos, since so far none of the largest and most important mounds have been excavated, from which the social complexity of the cultures that built these mounds could be better understood. So we have to think about that we found more than 100 of these mounds, and until now we have just excavated 4 of them. And the biggest ones like Loma Cotoca or El Cerrito, where we can hypothesize that they were like capitals from this cultural, they were not excavated until now. A new mound was excavated last year with the new project Human-Environmental Relationship in Pre-Columbian Amazonian that we have in collaboration with Eduardo Neves from the University of Sao Paulo and Frank Mail from the University of Reading. The Mount La Punta is around 60 kilometers from Loma Salvatierra on Loma Mendoza. The units were placed at different parts of the site and we found different archaeological contexts. By means of carbon-14 dating, the settlements period of this archaeological site was for all of the units between 600 and 800 AD. And that is really interesting because it is one of these mounds that was abandoned before these changes around 1000 AD. The prime chronological sequence of settlements of the mounds help in the evaluation of this process of sudden and gradual transformations, both locally and regionally. Abandonment of sites, remodeling, extensions, etc. Likewise, the continuous interactions of this population cause a series of gradual and or sudden changes in cultural traditions and patterns that influences the cultural characteristics on the populations. We are going to change a little bit the region and we go to the northeast of the Llanos de Mojos, where archaeological sites surrounded by ditches were documented. These sites have a long occupations more than 1000 years, from circa 300 until 1600 AD. For the first time in 2012, the German Archaeological Institute applied Lidar technology in the Amazon, and the results were more than revealing. Several trench systems were documented, both of the banks of major rivers and associated with small permanent water courses. We can see here this these trench systems that are along the river, this San Martin River, but we can see also some of them in what we know like terra firme, where just some permanent water courses exist. The largest site was about 200 hectares in size, and most of the ditches were probably built between 1200 and 1400 AD, contemporaneous with other landscape modifications such as causeways, canal systems, and fish traps. Settlements surrounded by ditches like fortification spread throughout the northeast of the Llanos de Mojos and in Rondônia, Brazil. Archaeological excavation at various sites demonstrated the cultural differences of these settlements, both in burial patterns and in cultural materiality. In the Amazon, there is a strong relationship between landscape and monumentality. There are, on one hand, monuments as landscape, natural places that inhabited the memory of the populations, and on the other hand, constructed and carefully planned landscape that are the monumentality of the past. Numerous large or small occupational sites are intertwined with ritual monuments and large engineering works for water management, roads, and agricultural fields. Most of the constructions are monumental earthworks concentrated in different prominent regions of the Llanos de Mojos in particular, and in Amazon in general. For example, over 400 archaeological sites consistent in ditches geometrical earthworks, including a massive circular and square ditches up to 7-meter deep, have been documented in the state of Acre, Brazil, dating between 1000 BC to 1200 AD. Their location on the top of and the edge of the plateaus suggest that they were built to control their surroundings, while the relative lack of archaeological finds inside of them and the presence of carefully deposited ceramic close the entrance of these earthworks suggest that they were regional ceremonial centers rather than settlement sites. We have, there is many different projects from Brazil and other universities
Carla,
that they are.
I think we lost you.
Hello. Could you hear me?
Yeah, you are back. Please go ahead. We lost probably
okay.
one
okay.
sentence.
Okay, then I would. So these are these ceremonial centers or regional ceremonial centers, rather than settlement sites, and there is a lot of archaeological projects.
Yeah, this is very unfortunate. We lost you again, Carla.
And there is. Hello?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, I can see you.
Okay, your image is frozen. But now you're back. I don't know if somebody has a suggestion to improve the connection, but now we can see you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I think I have just 10 points and we can start with the discussion. Okay, and I'm going ahead and say I just showed this amazing trench in the Acre region that they were interpreted like regional ceremonial centers. And what I am showing you is in central western Llanos de Mojos, the largest, densest, and most diverse concentration of agricultural landscape. If you can see here, and these archaeological remains, they were also investigated by a colleague John Walker, and he determined that they were constructed between 1200 BC until 1500 AD. Is everything all right now, Denise? Okay. Okay, but this incredible monumentality, there is not just in Llanos de Mojos. Mounds exist in several other regions of the Amazon. For example, on Marajo Island, at the mouth of the Amazon, hundreds of mounds built by the Marajoara culture, which developed between 400 and 1300 AD, are scattered in the savannas of the northeastern part of the Marajo Island. The vast majority of the mounds are found on the banks of the river and lakes, and in many cases, groups of up to 40 mounds can be recognized. And that is other example from Ecuador. The concentration of 100 platforms arranged in quadrangular form, like we can see here, and connected by road systems, is the best example of pre-Hispanic urbanism in Ecuadorian Amazonia. According to the current data, they were built between 700 BC and 500 AD. Lidar survey carried out by the Ecuadorian government in 2013 identified an urban center composed of hundreds of mounds covering an area of approximately 4.5 square kilometers. And we can also see here the two white roads running through the city from the west to the east. The diversity and complexity of archaeological sites found in the Amazon reflects the great linguistic and cultural diversity and the long history of occupation. There is a number of ways to learn about the past. Archaeology presents a singular opportunity to understanding the human past from its earlier occurrence up to the present, at several scales, over protracted time periods, and over widespread geographic expansions. Interdisciplinary, by nature, archaeological investigations can incorporate investigative methods and or information from the fields of history, anthropology, linguistics, geology, biology, and ecology, among others for our future further understanding. Today, in the spoken maps made in the town of Versalles, that is on Guaporé River in the Bolivian side, on the banks of the Guaporé River, the town shows a clear relationship of terra pretas, or dark earth. I don't know if you have ever heard about that. This is this so cultural or anthropogenic dark earth, and the people there, they made this spoken map, and you can see the clear relationship of terra preta with ceramic remains, and these same sites were old Gomeras barracks that nowadays are abandoned. Indigenous and traditional population demonstrate sophisticated process of adaptations to the variety of ecosystems. At first, only adaptations to Bercea and terra firme were observed, but progressively it was seen that life systems were more complexity adapted to a great diversity of types on flood zones. In the Amazon, there is a long-term process of creation of persistent and significant places of dwelling, management, and interaction, composed by archaeological sites and landscape reoccupied for several centuries. Those places is what we call cultural niche centers. Archaeology can support the conservation of the Amazon as long as it works collaboratively and inclusively with indigenous communities and the people settled on the archaeological sites. It is important that all information and results of our research are published in open access formats and in the local language. It is also important to make inter and transdisciplinary alliances with ecologists, anthropologists, sociologists, geographers, etc., in order to develop participatory methodologies that ensure the success of conservation projects. That means evaluations of strength and weakness of governance for the conservation and sustainable management of natural resources, including elaborations and initial implementations of institutional strengthening plans, considering networks and bridges between communities, municipal governments, and livestock and other actors. That means we have to identify key areas, activities, and also the principal actors. The diversity of activity, uses of great variety of natural resources seems to be definitive in terms of different footprints in these societies lived on the landscapes. So we can see here this forest island, for example, or here these ring ditches. And these different footprints that these societies live on the landscape, even in spite of their articulation with the market. In fact, it is estimated that between 2000 and 2013, indigenous territories in the Amazon have suffered less deforestation than their protected areas. Both types of areas showing lower deforestation rates than those determined for the rest of the region. At the same time, the diverse use of natural resources seems to hold the secret to the resilience of this population in the face of the various crises to which they have been and are periodically subjected. Fighting against the destruction of the Amazon is a war that can only be won if we bring together different universities, research institutes, governmental and non-governmental organizations, as well as social organizations. Only by joining forces can we protect one of the most beautiful spaces that exist on our planet. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Carla. This was really interesting. You transported all of us to the Amazonian and with very interesting stories. And I'm sure there is a lot to say and maybe some questions. I myself have like around 3 questions and particularly interested to know some points from you. I would ask the listeners, if you have a question, please raise your hand or just show yourself in the screen. And while you are thinking of your question or making it more concrete, I would like to ask you, Carla, if you could tell us like briefly a bit more of the project. In which point is this project? What are the objectives? If it has already finished, what are the prospects of the project? You were talking about this last one that you were talking about, human environmental project, I think it's called, with Brazil and the Reading University. How long it's going and what are the objectives? You can tell a bit more about it.
Okay, So this project is a joint project from different universities, University of Reading and University of Sao Paulo. They are leading this project, and what we're doing is we chose 3 different areas in Amazonian, in Bolivian and in Brazilian side, and we started to excavate because we have some questions, research question that has to be with the domestication of the plants. When the people started to domesticate the plants, and if this domestication originated some change in the society or not, because they continue with this mixed economy with fishing gatherings and then we want to know also the relationship with the climate change, because when the Spaniards and when they come to this area from the Llanos de Mojos, they have never seen something like that. Do we have any description from these mounds or raised fields or type of agriculture that I show you? That means that this culture, they have their onset, so they disappear before the Spaniards arrived. And one of our questions is why and when, and if the climate has to do with these changes, because like I said, we have also some indicators of change in the culture, in the diet and everything around 1100 AD.
Thank you, Carla. I don't see any hand up yet, so I will take the opportunity and the chance to make my second question. That's great for me.
I have to say that this project started last year, 2019, and this year due to the pandemic, we have to cancel all our field trips, and we are waiting that the project has an extension for 1 more year, and that would be until 2023.
Oh, okay.
This is 4-year project, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Something I was also very much interested to hear from you, it's about the approach, scientific approach, let's say, to the Amazonian region as a whole, because we know that countries have give different importance to the area, also historically, you know, like a Bolivian, I am also Bolivian, know that mining was the main focus and the main activity in our pre and post independence time, and the Amazonian was like a mystery, and we are looking at it with economic interests recently, so to say, in modern history, while other countries like Brazil, probably they were more like state intervention is more clear in Brazil, so in the Amazonian area. So how do you see these differences in how countries approach the Amazon, and how you see the consequences of this approach in this collaborative work from different countries in the Amazon region? It is working, or it is related to how countries really invest and the importance they give to this area?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think until maybe the 1980s, like you said, Amazonia was like a peripheral area, and some countries like Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, they represented more with the Andes, but what I think is up to maybe 1990s and the last 10 years, the Amazonian has had become has become an important place all over the world. And the projects that we are doing there, so we, for example, just in Llanos de Mojos, where we have colleagues from French, Swiss, Japan, USA, Germany, and I think it's like a hotspot at the moment, because it is something like it matters. You know, the Amazonian matters now, because we are seeing that the plans, that the future, what Bolsonaro and other states, the plans that they have, they are really against the Amazonian. And I think also for the archaeology, it is also a good moment, because what we are learning from the Amazon from the past, so from the cultures that they existed in the Amazon, is that they have a diversified economies based on hunting, fishing, harvesting, and the cultivation of plants domesticated over millennia. And maybe there is no like a big difference or distinction between what is natural and what is wild and what is cultural. And this view that was, I think, really Eurocentric, because here when the people started to domesticate the plants, they jumped to the agriculture really fast, and they started to live from the agriculture. That is what we call the Neolithic. This process we don't have in the Amazonian. We have another model, and this is like something new. And so what the diversity, and so we have the Amazonian like we have right now, with this huge biodiversity, just because the people used to live there in this way. And so they are part of this creation of biodiversity. And I think for conservation, that is really important. That is why I end my speech with the example that indigenous territories has less deforestation than their protected areas. Because we were always thinking in Amazonian or conservation program without the people. What we are showing through the archaeology and through the anthropology is that we need the people to conserve the Amazonia.
Okay, this is a great conclusion. We need the people to conserve the Amazon. Conservation is with people. I think many or some projects are taking these realizations recently, and there are a lot of interventions, as we were talking before you started your presentation, no? Many projects there that need to work in conjunction and transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary, as you mentioned at the beginning. So if nobody would like to make a question or comments, we are also approaching the hour. So thank you again, Carla. It was really a pleasure to have you here, and it was great. I think I learned something, and well, just to say, we hope to have you next time again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank to you for the attention, and yeah, have a nice day.
Okay.